behind. Don't regret missing your opportunity. Just think back, if you could go back a few years from now and you were able to invest in the very beginning with Google, AOL, Amazon, and eBay. Wow, you'd be pretty well off. Make your investment now. Invest in Stockton because our stock is rising. There's no mistaking that in 2012, our city hit rock bottom after the national economy did its damage. And let's be honest, it hasn't been good. So even though our future value will be high, today's value is not. Every scenario creates an opportunity for someone. We just have to figure out who. So who benefits from a low present value now that is on pace to be a future high value? Investors. Investors want to get in before the price gets too high so they can ride that wave of success. Before long, our stock will rise, and it will bring with it the good and the bad that comes with success. Don't get left behind. Don't regret missing your opportunity. Just think back, if you could go back a few years from now and you were able to invest in the very beginning with Google, AOL, Amazon, and eBay. Wow, you'd be pretty well off. Make your investment now. Invest in Stockton because our stock is rising. There's no mistaking that in 2012, our city hit rock bottom. After the national economy did its damage to our community, we suffered from high foreclosures, high unemployment, a reduced police force, record homicides, low employee morale, and negative national and local media attention. In 2013, during this past year, the city has been hard at work beyond all the political distractions and local headlines. If you take a deep look, you will see what we have accomplished, and accomplished much to address the major issues. We successfully proved in federal court that we had a right to declare financial insolvency, and that after much public input, we formulated a plan to exit bankruptcy, stabilize our finances, and put additional cops back on our streets. As you'll hear in a few minutes, we've made major progress in both finance and crime, and with the efforts of local business leaders like yourselves, citizens, and employees, we've turned this ship called Stockton in the right direction and set a course for greener pastures. Our stock is rising. The council members and I have established a new set of strategic priorities so that the city manager and his staff have clear direction and we can continue to do the work of the people, even though sometimes it seems that we're overtaken by distractions. Our stock is rising. In the coming weeks, we will adopt a budget, end the bankruptcy trial, and take the next steps toward implementing the Marshall Plan on crime and make public announcements about economic development deals currently in the work. Our stock is rising. People are beginning to take notice that we're making national headlines for things other than crime and bankruptcy. From the McDonald's pilot program to the Google barge, Stockton's value is becoming less and less of a secret. Even though we're close to moving past it all, the bankruptcy still dominates much of our resources. And so it's important for us to talk about it. But rather than just hearing it from me, it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce to you a calm and intelligent young leader in our community who has instantly given City Hall a much-needed facelift. I was proud to nominate him for the position, and the City Council unanimously hired him 7-0. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new City Manager, Kurt Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the Port for hosting this wonderful event. So I want to talk a little bit about the bankruptcy, and I've titled it Chapter 9 to Chapter 1. Chapter 9 referencing, obviously, the United States Bankruptcy Code, and Chapter 1 referencing the new beginning that we now have for Stockton. When we look back at where we were, so we've obviously had some challenges. You've heard about those from everyone. There's no big secret. The reason we had those challenges were quite a few reasons, but the main thing was that we had the Great Recession. So the Great Recession impacted Stockton worse than other communities because we were unprepared. We found ourselves in a position where we really had no buffer. We really weren't in a stable financial place, so we weren't able to weather the storm. We were overextended. We had chronic fiscal crises going on. We had a mismatch of resources and expectations, and we were unpredictable and unstable. And whether or not we realized it at the time, we were facing a costly and embarrassing bankruptcy. How did we get there? We got there first by not saying no. Now, that may seem a little odd, but as public figures, our goal is to work for the public. So when a member of the public or somebody else who serves the public comes up and says, you know what, I really want X, we inherently want to give it to them. We say, you know what, that's a nice thing. They deserve it. It'd be a wonderful thing. Yes, you want a cop on every corner? We should have it. You want an arena? Fantastic. Let's give it to you. You want every pothole filled today? Let's do it. So we wanted to do all those things, but we didn't say no. Even though people deserved those wonderful things, we couldn't afford it. We should have said no. We were overly optimistic. We entered into a series of risky and aggressive deals. We failed to consider the long term, and we had poor fiscal management. Then we added things like the elimination of the redevelopment agencies, and essentially the Great Recession was able to overtake us. When we talk about overtaking us and we talk about where Stockton was, it's important to have a context of what was really at stake. So when the city was frantically working through the AB 506 process before filing for bankruptcy, or as we've been working through the bankruptcy process, it's helpful to understand exactly what was at stake. We had the police station, the main police facility, which was in danger of going to a creditor. You can see how challenging, how embarrassing that is for a city to have to deal with that. We had fire stations, the Stuart Eberhard building, the parking garage next to the Stuart Eberhard building. We had the Stockton Event Center, the arena, the former Washington Mutual building at 400 East Main, the Maya Angelou Library, the arena parking garage, Coy and Market parking garages, Oak Park, and the golf courses at Van Buskirk and Swenson, and even the marina. We had high stakes. We were highly, highly invested in making sure that we got out of this bankruptcy and we got to a plan that could keep us stable. To do that, first the City Council took a step back, along with leaders like Kevin O'Rourke and Bob Dice, and figured out what mattered most, saying we are no longer in a position where we can do everything. We can't be all things to all people, so help us figure out a priority for what we're going to save, what we're going to focus on, and what we're going to do going forward. That also involved a self-assessment that revealed some ugly realities when it came to our fiscal policies and even our operations. We endured service and personnel reductions. We entered new labor contracts. And incidentally, those labor and personnel and service reductions were severe. For police, that was a 25% reduction. That meant 25% less police officers on the street to serve the needs of the citizens and the business owners here in Stockton. For fire, that number was 30%. And for non-safety employees, we reduced 43%. So when we talk about the impact to the service level to the citizens in Stockton, it's because we now have 43% less people to serve the same number of citizens, the same number of business owners, the same number of stakeholders that we once did. These were dark days for us. We had some labor cost reductions, but fast forward into that, we had some post-employment cost reductions. When all those things weren't enough, and incidentally, those things meant that we reduced the city's general fund by $90 million. It still wasn't enough. We still had a $26 million hole. We then went after retiree health, which was the absolute most painful decision of the entire bankruptcy process. But it was necessary because it was a $545 million obligation completely unfunded that the city could simply not afford. That was very painful for the retirees, for the current employees who would ultimately be retirees, and for everyone else who was even sitting on the sidelines. It was a very, very painful process. We also made substantial reductions to CalPERS. We made a tier reduction, meaning that employees who were hired new would have a different formula to be able to calculate their retirements. It would be a less generous formula, but it ends up saving the city money. The state implemented some pension reform after that, again, to save the city some money. And with respect to CalPERS, we also reduced all of the different factors that contribute to our CalPERS rate. Again, we saved money when it came to CalPERS. For the other creditors, we negotiated very difficult decisions, but we did it with the underlying principle that we can only enter into a deal that we could honestly afford. Not something that was going to just get us through the next budget cycle, get us past the next election, but to make sure that we entered into deals that we could legitimately afford as a city for the life of the obligation. So if it was a 20-year deal, a 30-year deal, we needed to know what that looked like. And we crafted a long-range financial plan to help us model that number and give us a basis for making those same decisions. We reduced, delayed, or eliminated principal and investment and interest payments on that debt service, and we protected the general fund. The general fund is the only fund that was actually bankrupt. So we've gone to great lengths to learn from that and make sure that we protect the general fund. So where are we going now? We've got a brand new executive team. We've got a new finance team. We've got lessons learned. We've got some things on tap to work on our efficiency, our internal controls. All those things together are embedded in this plan of adjustment, this exit strategy that we have presented for the court. And the most significant part about that is over the long haul, that plan reduces the long-term liabilities for Stockton citizens by over $1 billion. You don't get to a $1 billion number easily. Getting to that number took a lot of sacrifice from a lot of people who are here in this room. So you know what it took to get there. So we're proud that we got there, but we have to recognize to never go back. So what's going to play out in the near term here in Stockton is we're starting to see the first steps toward recovery. And now that we've got a better handle on things, you'll start to see a few things. I released a budget this week, and you'll see in there it's got a small fund balance. And there's going to be a real push for people saying, hey, you've got money, quick, let's go spend it. Hey, I want to get back to where we were before the cuts. I want to be at the same place I was a few years ago because that's when it was a good time. And if the goal of the city is to get back to where we were several years ago, then absolutely that's the way to go. We should take that money and put it right there. But my contention is a few years ago, several years ago, we were not in a good place. We may not have realized it, but we were in a very unhealthy place. We were unstable. We didn't realize where our revenues were going to come from. We didn't have a true grasp of what our expenditures were. We were really teetering on the brink, which is what led to the bankruptcy. So for the staff perspective, it's not good enough to go back to where we were several years ago. So as difficult as it is, there's going to be a lot of pushback. And while the staff is going to be saying, hey, we don't think we should rush today to restore each one of those cuts that have happened, it's not because we think, oh, people don't deserve it. Oh, we don't need it. It's not important. It's simply because we're looking at the long term. And we're looking at what we need to do to be solvent for the long term, to make sure that before we begin to restore those services, we need to make sure that we're on a solid foundation. We're going to get to that point. We're going to grow. We're going to get to be able to restore those services and more, but it's going to take some time. But when it happens, we want to make sure that it happens for good and that we're never going to return to this place. I called it Chapter 9 to Chapter 1 because we're going from bankruptcy court to a new beginning. But in the back of our mind, we need to make sure that our next step is not going to be Chapter 9. Our recovery is going to be slow, and it's going to require a lot of discipline from a lot of people because we're going to have to really stay the course. But as long as we're able to do that, our future is bright. Things are lined up very well for us. We have an outstanding plan in place because of the sacrifices that each one of you in this room has made. So the future for Stockton is very bright. Mr. Mayor?
What do you guys think of our new city manager? The next issue that dominates our attention is obviously public safety. As you know, we've made a lot of progress, but we still have much more work to do. So let's bring up an expert, another professional that is making a difference in Stockton each and every day, nonstop working to combat crime and to keep us safe. Please welcome Chief of Police Eric Jones.
It is a privilege to stand before you and address this crowd. Although I stand here, we all stand face to face with significant challenges. But they are challenges that we acknowledge openly, there are hard issues that we bravely discuss, and we are transparent about our issues so we can make progress. We must continue to address our violent crime problem. We must better address blight, quality of life, and all types of crime. We must give better service to our community. We must better connect with the community. We must also retain our experienced staff, and we must recruit the best candidates for our future police officer additions, while also striving for a more diverse workforce. Those are all significant challenges, but the good news is that we have plans for each and every one of those challenges. The key is staying on course for those plans and taking the time to do it right. Although your Stockton Police Department has been around since 1850, its most significant challenges have really been only in just recent history. We've been through a lot, ups and downs, hard times, and challenges, but also opportunities and accomplishments. Here are some of our accomplishments. Last year, shootings were reduced by about 40%, and homicides were reduced by about half. So far this year, homicides are still an issue, but shootings overall are still down 25% over last year, and so is overall crime. We've made strides, but we must look at long-term trend lines with long-term solutions and plans. This requires something more than patience. It requires steadfast dedication. We must continue to focus on violence while we also rebuild the police department through Measure A funding. The public safety portion of Measure A funds three components from the Marshall Plan. First, rebuilding the police department staff. Secondly, creating a neighborhood blitz team. And third, creating an Office of Violence Prevention. The first component adds 120 police officers to our ranks. That was and is desperately needed. As we know, in the past couple years, we have been one of the most understaffed police departments in the entire nation for a city our size or larger. And that does not even account for crime rate. We also know that the single best deterrent to crime in a given neighborhood is a highly visible police force. So how are we going to use the 120 officers? Well, contained in the police department's 3-year strategic plan, we explain it will be in two ways. First, strategically on our violence reduction initiative. Secondly, with enough officers on patrol to get back to what's known as core community policing. Although community policing has been defined extensively by criminologists and books have been written about it, it simply comes down to this. It is having enough staff to be responsible for smaller geographic areas where they have enough time to get out of the patrol cars and have positive interactions with the community to get to know people in the neighborhood. Although hiring 120 additional officers is very exciting, it comes with a few caveats. It will take time, at least 3 years. Our goal is to hire enough for a net gain of 40 per year for the next 3 years. But we cannot rush numbers without ensuring that our hiring standards of professionalism remain in place. And we must also recognize the recruitment challenges and that we must be better reflective of the community we serve. We do face an ongoing recruitment and retention problem. We do have to recognize that our police officers are under market rate for compensation in our area, and this is an issue that needs to be addressed over the long term, in my opinion. Although we've hired well over 100 new officers in the last 2 years, we've lost about 100 officers for various reasons for a net gain of 40. As you can see, it will be a challenge, but it's a challenge that your police department is up for. The second Marshall Plan component is the creation of neighborhood blitz teams to complete 90-day blitzes in target neighborhoods to address blight and quality of life. We recognize that these things like abandoned buildings, graffiti, aggressive panhandling, that all neighborhoods have been affected by, can be better addressed. The third Marshall Plan component is the creation of the Office of Violence Prevention. which will expand our gang outreach workers and will better coordinate with schools, other governments, and service providers to work on prevention for those most at risk. It will operate under the Stockton ceasefire philosophy. As you can see, a lot of good things are going on, but let us not neglect giving credit to the community. The community has certainly helped in our fight on crime in a number of ways, and we as a police department are embracing the community's help. Whether that help stems from compassion or frustration, we embrace the help. We found that not only can you reduce crime while strengthening relationships in the community, but we should and must. Whoever owns public space shapes the climate of a neighborhood or an entire community. This is a phrase we sometimes use in law enforcement. It means that if criminals own or operate our public space, such as a park, and whether it is real or perceived, the community is in fear. If it is viewed that the police have taken over or own a space, it can be viewed as a government occupation. But if the community itself owns that public space, you have made it to a sense of a community that cares for itself, and you will then have success. And I think we are helping the community take back some of those public spaces. I think the things that are working with your police department are based on technology, talent, and tenacity. With new technology, we are being strategic, innovative, and data-driven. Here are just a few examples of outstanding crime-fighting technology that we have brought to Stockton through grants or through donations. Predictive analysis by Bear Analytics, which is real-time policing, intelligent-led policing software. A gunshot detection system called ShotSpotter, which the Stockton Police Foundation is working on to fund. And GunOps, with a ballistic examiner with the best technology in the field, and his work for the county-wide firearms reduction consortium that we work on with the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office. We are policing smarter. We're also using technology to expand our communication efforts, reaching more people, even through social media. In fact, we are ranked as the most liked police Facebook page in the entire country for a police department our size. That's worth applause. Next is talent. Your SPD staff are some of the finest in the nation. They train hard and work hard, and I am proud to lead the fine men and women of the Stockton Police Department. I can design policing plans, but we all know that it is the sweat of the frontline personnel of your police department that make it happen. We as a police department are recognized nationally. Recently, one of our deputy chiefs received the Naval Postgraduate Academy Philip Zimbardo Award for keen insight and analysis. We're also a leading West Coast agency in rolling out cutting-edge police legitimacy and procedural justice training from Chicago. Coupled with ceasefire, it is considered the future of community policing. We have presented to national and international audiences of our recent work here. We have been asked by the U.S. COPS Director, the U.S. Attorney General, on multiple occasions to present our violence reduction efforts to police departments across the nation. We have presented at Stanford University to international audiences and the state capitol on what we're doing here. So what has their attention here? It is our comprehensive plan. It's about the full model of what we're doing for the long term. Strategic enforcement with data and technology, our continued partnerships with other area law enforcement, the ceasefire message, and the philosophy of violence reduction, and police-community partnerships. These are the four legs of the stool when it comes to the police work in Stockton. It requires work to stay on course. And that brings us to the final point, tenacity. Is our work done on violent crime, or is it ready to shift? No. We have so much work to do before that. But our plan is solid. Our plan lays the foundation of best practices and builds upon it for the custom fit that Stockton needs. I often hear and agree that things are starting to turn around. Starting is the key word, and there is so much more work to do. But that's also why this is an exciting time. We know that the police and community must work together now like never before, and that's our goal. Let's stay resilient. Let's do this together. Thank you.
Those were very important issues, but that alone doesn't capture the essence of what Stockton is all about. I've asked my colleagues on the City Council to help me take a broader look at Stockton. So let's hear from our City Council members. I also want to offer up and extend a prayer to Nick Elliott from the Stockton Asparagus Festival for a speedy recovery. When you say the name of another city, certain words might come to mind. For instance, if I say Lodi, what do you think about? I'm guessing you think about wine and grapes. I think about wine, grapes, and rich people. Well, some people may say, what do you say when you say the word Stockton? What comes to mind? In the past, some people might say crime and bankruptcy. But guess what? Change is occurring, and soon the city will be restored to our former glory. And then what will people think of our city when we say our city's name? Wouldn't it be nice if we were known as a city where we make it very easy to own and operate a business? A city where we go out of our way to attract new companies and provide enough jobs for our residents. A city where our college graduates will be afforded the opportunity to start a career, buy a home, start a family, and stay in Stockton. A city that is not politically divided by the haves and have-nots, rather they find a way to help each other. A city that implements real solutions for the homeless population and finds a way to put them to work. A city that truly believes in second chances, and especially for formerly incarcerated residents, and helps them find a way to become self-sufficient. A city that has adequate resources for our animal services. A city that will no longer tolerate trash on our streets and graffiti on our walls. A city where the marina is filled with boats bustling with activity. A city where a sellout crowd at the ballpark or the arena is a regular occurrence. A city where all your retail needs and wants are met right here in Stockton, so your dollars stay right here in our community. A city that truly invests in our downtown and finishes the redevelopment that we started so many years ago. A city where local media newspapers report the news instead of try to create the news and drum up unnecessary controversy, only that hinders the progress of our city. My friends, working together, we can make these visions a reality, and we can restore this city, and we can rebrand it. As you've heard, there are exciting things happening right here in Stockton. With the past behind us and a bright future within our reach, there is no better time to invest in Stockton because our stock is rising. In closing, I want to say one more thing. I live and breathe Stockton, and I want only what's best for our city and everyone that lives here and who plans on coming here. I've devoted my life to building a stronger Stockton, neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street. And if you already own stock in this city, then I'm advising you, as your mayor, to hold on to that stock because you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Stockton, California, a port city. Stockton, California, a waterfront city. Stockton, California, an all-American city once again. And I want to make it very clear to everyone that in this city, Stockton is open for business. God bless you. Thank you, everybody.
Well, that's the end of our program. I want to thank the mayor, the city manager, the police chief, and the city council members for providing us an enlightening and educational program today. I also want to thank again the Port of Stockton for hosting this event. Please take time to check out our exhibitors on your way out, but thank you again for coming, and hope to see you again here next year. Thank you.